we're here to talk about some pretty special boards that I've been told they're all sold, maybe a couple left. Mark, they look amazing. What was the inspiration behind them?
Behind the collar or the actual boards?
The boards themselves.
Well, the easy one is that, firstly, thanks for everyone turning up. It's great to see everyone here, and I appreciate Tim coming, and thanks to Tim and the boys for all the effort they've actually put in to organising tonight. The inspiration for doing the mid-length was, I'm not really sure. I always wanted to sort of do one. Years and years ago, when Nick and I had the shop around the corner, we did a model for a big guy, and the size range for that was 6'8" to 7'6", and it was just basically a bigger blown up thruster aimed at, I guess, more mature surfers who wanted something that was a little bit easier to ride and easy to catch waves on. So I sort of got the idea to do one last year, and the first one was a round tail. It was like retro style with a beak, and Sean Shotter actually got that one. And then I went off in a different direction and thought that I'd do that was a round tail. I thought I'd do a swallowtail model and do a similar rocker to what I did on the Flying Fish. So it sort of took about a year to actually come to fruition, because when you do a model, the initial thing is you've got to have the idea. I started with a 7-footer because when you computer scan boards, you pick a size in the middle so you can generate up and down. And then you've got to kind of figure out how wide to make the nose, the tail, like the thickness distribution, the foil, fin configuration. So it sort of takes a while for it to, I guess, for the idea to germinate. And then the first one I test rode it and it went really well. And then the next step was getting computer cuts of all the other sizes and checking that the way the machine generates or shrinks something, that it actually came out right. So you've got to test cut and shape one of every size. And the 7-footer, I actually haven't ridden one for months because I got totally spoiled riding one. The 7-footer, I rode it for about a week off the rocks, and I think I was probably a total menace on it because I was catching thousands of waves, and I was catching all those waves that you can't normally catch. Like, people wait for sets, and there's sometimes these thicker ones come through that are hard to catch. And I was sitting there, and even though it wasn't my turn, I was just going, holy shit, I can catch this, and no one's going. So what's that? Wavehog? Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm fairly chilled, but if you put a contest singlet on me, I can turn into your worst nightmare.
What made you go the Swallow over the previous? Was it a Pinto?
Well, the previous one was, or the first one that Sean got was a round tail. Because I was initially thinking 5 sets of plugs and doing it as a quad thruster. And then in the feedback that I got from the guys in Queensland that do the glassing, and from Tim and Mick and the boys in Slimes, they were all going, it's got to be a twin fin setup. And it just seemed obvious, as it was going to be a twin fin setup, to do it with a swallowtail.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And out of all the mid-lengths coming out at the moment, most of them are your round tails and your pintails. So it's nice to see a Swallow come out, because personally I love the Swallows. I think they work so well with the twin fin setup. The boards, did you ride many of them coming through the stages of setting them up? Like, when you talk about putting it through the computer generator, how many models do you go through till, how many prototypes before you come to the one?
Well, there was sort of two. There was the first one that Sean got that became not the model. And then there was a second one, which was a 7-footer I made.
And that was it?
That was it. I liked it instantly.
You hit it that straight away?
Yeah. But it was more like, when you're trying to create something, you don't just go and get a blank and start attacking without a plan.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a plan of what I wanted to do, and I had some nose, centre and tail widths that I'd used on the Flying Fish that I worked with. And there's a certain amount of rocker that you actually put in a board, like a high performance short board somewhere has around 5.25 to 5 1/2 inches of nose lift and usually 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 inches of tail lift. So you've sort of got a scale of measurements, or you've got an idea of what you're actually doing in terms of measurements. And then it's just hand shaping something that you want to finish a certain way. And I guess I got lucky that the first one I was really happy with it and it served really well. And it was just a matter of the guys at the machine who do the cutting just generating from that board. They computer mapped that board and then just generated sizes from that board. And then it was just getting one of each size cut and finish shaping it to check that I was sort of happy with it. Yeah, it's sort of...
And you spoke about getting all those waves being wave hog out of the rocks. In the last few years, the mid-lengths and the bigger boards have really become popular in the wider surfing community. Why do you think, for the average punter, that is? Why do you think people are moving away from the HP, the high performance shorties, and kind of branching out a bit?
I think that those boards can be hard to ride unless you surf really well.
Yeah.
Like a modern high performance surfboard, it goes insane, but you need a certain level of fitness. And I think there's an age bracket where you can sort of surf those boards well. If you're a little older, they can be a little challenging to surf. So I think we're kind of in a pretty unique era in surfboard design where if you walk around the racks here, there's tons of high performance shortboards, but there's twin fins and fishers and quads and
there's
all
an array.
channel bottoms. There's a whole array there. So it's if you're trying to buy a surfboard, I don't think there's ever been a better time to buy a surfboard, because going back in time, you had a choice of a high performance shortboard or a Mal. There was no in between. And now there's all these like incredible alternatives in between, where if you don't want to ride a Mal and you don't want to ride a high performance shortboard, there's a ton of boards in that centre range that paddle really well and also surf really well. So I think the reason that fun boards and mid-lengths have become so popular is because there's a lot of people that don't want to or can't ride a high performance shortboard. And as well as Mals go, they are big, hard to fit in the back of the car sometimes, which can be an issue. And you've really got to stand on the tail to sort of surf them, whereas mid-lengths or fishers or boards in that middle range, like they paddle great, you catch waves and they still turn really well. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. You've seen so many generations of surfboard design come through. Personally, surfing for you now, is it easier? Do you miss the boards, the 1980 retros, those boards? I mean, I'm riding one at the moment. I love it. Do you miss a certain generation? Do you have a favourite era of surfboards?
I don't think I've got a favourite era of surfboards. I've got a favourite era of surfing, which was...
When's that?
Probably back in the 70s when there was no one around.
I was going to ask later on, and I'll ask it now, when was your best free surf? Are you able to tell us where it was? Was that in the 70s?
Yeah, the best free surf was in the 70s, but I think the best surfing memories were probably the 70s, because surfing around Newcastle, you pretty much knew everyone in the water and you took it in turns for waves. There was like order in the water.
Yeah.
These days it's very hard to kind of maintain order in the water. You attempt to, but at some point it just becomes like a free-for-all. And in terms of surfing, probably tangenting here, but I think that was part of the earlier question, is some surfs can be really fun and some can be like a complete exercise in frustration. Like I had a surf yesterday where I actually kind of came out of the water and it was like, should I can still surf semi-okay? And then the day before I walked out of the water and it was nearly to walk of shame up the beach. I had the biggest shock. I had a couple of waves. I think the first wave I didn't get to my feet and went over the falls, and then the second wave I got a straight hander, and then the third wave I did a bottom turn. It was a wave off the rocks and the wall went really fat, and I did a cutback and I just did the biggest rail dig bog of all time. So that was kind of how that surf went. So It's funny when you get older. I'm sure all the elder gentlemen here appreciate that. You know, some surfs are, you know, you feel like you're going all right, and other surfs it's just a horror show.
I have that now, so I hate to think what's going to be like. It's nice to know that a 4-time world champion does it.
Wait till you get to 65. You're in big trouble.
What was it like growing up with Mick Adam and your friends back in the 70s around Newey, taking turns? What was it like, the culture?
It was good. It was, you know, surfing was super fun. It was really enjoyable. There's that iconic shot of Mick and I at Merriweather when my dad's sitting in the combi, the brown combi above watching, and it was absolutely like perfect ladies, lefts and rights, and 4 or 5 feet. And I think I was going left and Mick was going right, and there was about 3 people in the water, and that was sort of how it was then. But it's kind of hard. Like there was one time I was in the water at Off the Wall in the mid 80s, and I was moaning to a Hawaiian guy about how crowded it was at the time, and he kind of looked at me and just said, you know, you're right, but you're wrong. And he sort of went into this spiel where he said, I've never forgotten the words, he said, we're living in good times. And I sort of said to him, I don't really know what you mean by we're living in good times. And he said, you've got to keep in mind that, I think it was 1985, he said, right now it's more crowded than it was like in 1984, but it's less crowded than it's going to be in 1986. So every time I get kind of frustrated, you know, if there's like 30 people in the water, I think, shit, you know.
There'll be 31 tomorrow.
Because there'll be 31 tomorrow or 35 next year. So it's, I don't know, it's sort of hard. It's really nice seeing people in the water. And for Tim and Nick's business, it's great that people sell surfboards, but really from a surfing experience point of view, you just wish everyone would piss off and stop surfing.
Do you still feel the drive when when all the people are in the water and you're having those surfs where you're bogging rails, going over the falls? Do you still have that love for surfing and for shaping boards?
I still have the love for shaping boards. I sometimes question my love for going surfing because it can be an exercise in frustration with the experience in the water and also the declining surfing ability and sort of fitness. You know, it can be sometimes kind of frustrating because you've got a level that you'd like to surf at. And I don't think it matters whether you're the, you know, like worst surfer in the world or best surfer in the world or a recreational surfer or an age group. I think every time you go for a surf, you hope you're going to surf okay.
You have your idea about what you can do.
Like everyone's got a level they surf at, and it's nice to be able to surf at that level, or maybe get a wave where you do a turn and go, wow, that's one of the best turns I've sort of done. So it gets frustrating as you get older because you can't surf the way that you would like to be able to surf. In terms of shaping, it's kind of like an endless quest, because you're only really as good as the last board you did, and you never reach a point where you go, that's it, I can't shape a better board. Like each time you shape a board, you're trying to do something better than the last one. And when someone orders a board, the 2 things they sort of ask for is that, like, I want it to go fast and I want it to turn really easy. And those 2 things, it's hard to find a balance between those 2 things, because to make a board turn really easy, you just put a shipload of bottom curve in it, but then it goes nowhere. To make a board go really fast, you do a really straight bottom, but then it doesn't turn. So it's this constant balance between those 2 factors. And it's still, like, shaping is still, it's still, like, I find it really exciting and you know, it's a challenge, and every time you make someone bored, you nearly drug addict wise crave the feedback. You know, that they actually like the board, because it's like, for someone buying a surfboard, it's, you know, it's $1,000 outlay, so it's a big outlay, and you know, people work hard for their money, so you kind of want them to get something that they're really happy with. And, you know, you want sort of good feedback, but it's also scary. You don't want to ask sometimes either, because you're worried they don't like it. So you know, sometimes it can be a bit daunting going. You know, if someone gets a board, daunting asking if they actually like it.